One thing we know about early severe weather season setups in the Great Lakes region is that they are complicated, and this one is no outlier. We have the potential for some severe weather in Illinois and Indiana if certain conditions can be met. In this video, we're going to talk about the conditions that need to be met and also the potential impacts we could see with this setup. Hello everybody, the time is 7:35 p.m. and it is March 12th. Welcome to another update from Great Lakes Weather. Hopefully everybody's doing well, and boy, have the temperatures been nice today. We've had temperatures in the 70s across much of the Great Lakes region, and that's probably also going to continue into tomorrow, but we're going to start to see an end to that come Thursday afternoon into Thursday evening as we see the passage of a cold front boundary and kind of the clashing between cold air masses and warm air masses, and we are going to have probably some thunderstorms along a warm frontal boundary making its way north into Illinois and Indiana. It's going to clash with some pretty cold air, and there's going to be some questions as to the severe weather that we will see as a result of the movement of this warm front, as well as the amount of instability that we could see form out behind it. So lots of things in question here. Let's get right to it and dive right into the setup that we have currently shown by the SPC. Now you do see that it is a slight risk for severe weather across portions of southeastern Iowa, western Illinois. All of Illinois is included in the marginal risk, and then western Indiana and extreme southwestern Michigan is included in the setup as of the current SPC outlook. Now you can, I think, based on what the recent model trends have been showing, I would not be surprised to see portions of this risk area extended eastward into more further portions of Michigan, maybe portions of the I-94 corridor south, and then maybe further into Indiana as well, maybe in a little bit of extension of the slight risk. There's still a lot of things at play with regards to this setup, and there's still model differences, model variabilities. One thing that is probably going to be more expected than what we had with the February 27th event, which I will say this event does look similar, but it does look weaker. The difference is that there is very likely going to be convective development prior to the arrival of these storms and the development of these storms across Illinois and Indiana as well. And we'll look at that in just a minute. But you can see marginal risk for severe thunderstorms across western Indiana, southwestern Michigan, all of Illinois under a risk for severe weather, and then portions of western Illinois under a slight risk. And you get a probabilistic look. There is the chance for some significant severe weather within the hatched region shown across portions of Illinois. Again, possibility that could be extended a little bit eastward. Would not be surprised to see that based on the recent model trends. But it also has a lot to do with the northward push of the warm front that's going to be associated with this. So that's the big question. How far north is that going to go? And also, how much instability will be ahead of that warm front as well. So we're going to take a look at the models. And again, the models are not fully coming together on this setup just yet, so there's still going to be some variabilities. We're going to take a look at mainly the Euro model, get an idea of how the winds are going to be interacting in the atmosphere as well, because one big thing we're going to be focused on is the potential for those storms as they follow that warm front to become elevated as they approach that cooler layer of air that's going to be at the surface. So that's the big question as we start to see these storms develop on Thursday. So let's go right to it with the latest from the Euro model. Okay, so again, what you're going to start to see is the development of a low pressure system further to the southwest, and there are going to be some storms developing overnight across portions of western Missouri. That's also still associated with the same system. It's progressing forward. You kind of see those storms don't really do too much into the Great Lakes region. As we get into Wednesday, you start to see the development of maybe a few showers and thunderstorms across portions of Indiana and Michigan. There is potential for a few to pop up as the low pressure system makes its way into the region. I don't expect those to be very impactful. The potential for severe weather is not really there for these storms, but there could be some rumbles of thunder and maybe some rain associated with the storms that we could see Wednesday night into Thursday. But then you start to notice that an increase in coverage and intensity of thunderstorms is going to make its way in. And as that continues to move through, we start to see that convection lift off to the north with that warm front. And one thing you do notice here is as that lifts off to the north, we got this kind of area of clearing just to the south of this convection that is moving its way along that warm front. This is the primary area we should be watching for severe weather that is currently being shown at about 1 p.m. on Thursday, which is why I think we will start to see a little bit of an eastward shift into the risk area because the models have trended further south and further east up to this point. So if you get a sounding out in this area of the environment at about 1 p.m. Thursday, once again, you see marginal severe potential starting to show itself. And one thing that's different also from this setup that we will see with this compared to the February 27th event is that the capping inversion is not really as abundant as we had during February 27th. There's not really too much capping going on in the atmosphere, according to the Euro model at least. And what that's going to do is that's going to enable more convection to start to fire off. Cape values of around 800, which again is not that much, but with enough speed shear and directional shear, you'll start to see the development of some thunderstorms that could produce some severe weather. Now, as of 1 p.m., the development of severe thunderstorms appears to be of a lower chance across this region. You get a sounding out further back towards western Illinois. The expectation is that that threat hazard will kind of increase a little bit more. You see storm relativity is definitely not as high as compared to February 27th either. Instability, though, is rising once again up into close to 2,000. Again, with this type of setup, if you get Cape values closer to 2,000 in any situation, that's a good environment for thunderstorms. And cloud bases are getting closer to low, but you can see your hodograph really does not match up too super strongly with that curvature that you would want for a strong tornado setup. So again, a tornado or two could be possible with these storms that will develop later on, and that's just something we're going to have to watch out for as we get closer to the event. Let's fast forward. You see that convective development does initiate pretty rapidly after 1 p.m. across portions of western Illinois based on the latest Euro model. Is this going to change? I very likely think it's going to change over the next couple of days up until the event. We'll have to see how the models trend, but you can see current models are trending that center of low pressure to kind of be displaced farther to the south and east than what was being shown according to the SPC outlook, because that has been shifting over the past several hours. But if you get a sounding out ahead of some of these storms that are going to be in Illinois, you see, again, still that marginal tornado potential still being shown. Storm relativity getting closer to 200 between the surface and 3 kilometer level. But the cloud bases are getting a little bit more elevated. You're getting more elevated supercells starting to form. And again, big question with these is how elevated are these storms going to be? Because as they lift off to the north, or as they interact with that warm front, the question is, will they become surface-based, or will they begin to become more elevated as that cold air pushes its way far to the south? Because there will be a push of cold air making its way south into Wednesday night, and that cold air will be at the surface, but the warmer air will be aloft. And we will look at that in just a minute. But as we get close, as you go up towards Michigan, you get a sounding up there. That's not really the best sounding you can get. But if you, let's see, if we take a look at a different model here, going towards perhaps the HRRR at this point, you get a sounding out in this general area. You do notice that there's a significant capping inversion there. I think I need to take a closer look at the NAM 3K to give you an idea of what I am talking about. NAM 3K, again, there's going to be some surface level cold air that's going to be making its way south Wednesday night into Thursday, and then storms could potentially fire along that warm frontal boundary as it makes its way northward. But if you get a sounding out ahead of some of these cells that do develop into Thursday night, take a look at that sharp temperature gradient and those sharp differences in the wind direction at the surface compared to the upper levels. So again, there's potential that these storms could become very heavily elevated, and these storms may produce some large hail. But again, the question is, will the storms along that warm frontal boundary become elevated? So again, one thing I'm watching kind of carefully is this 558 line, because models seem to be hinting at the fact that as this boundary begins to lift further to the north, we start to see the potential for these storms to become a bit more surface-based and increased severe potential. And that's going to kind of be the thing to watch out for with this setup throughout the time of this actual event. But current plans for chasing this is probably going to be along the I-24 corridor, or the US 24, not I-24, it's not interstate, but US 24 corridor along Indiana and portions of eastern Illinois. Probably not going to make my way out into western Illinois. The question remains, though, is how is this setup going to change, and will that warm front go further to the north of what is currently projected or further to the south? So I really think In terms of severe weather, Michigan is not going to see as much of a threat from this. February 27th, we saw much more severe weather in portions of Michigan, but I really think it's going to be shifting farther to the south in portions of Indiana and Illinois. And I wouldn't be even surprised to see some thunderstorms make their way into Ohio as well. The severity levels in those will still be in question, but again, you get a sounding out ahead of the storm as it gets towards southern Ohio near the Dayton area. There to Cedarville region also. You do see that marginal tornado potential. Cloud bases, they are slightly elevated, but again, could be the potential to produce maybe some stronger wind gusts, maybe some hail as those move through. So that's the big question now. So HRRR really also catching on to that fact that boundary lifting north associated and following kind of behind this patch of convection. You get a sounding out behind that patch of convection on the southern edge in Wisconsin, and the sounding is rather impressive. You see a very low cloud base. You have CAPE all the way from the surface up into the higher levels of the atmosphere, and some good indications of some severe weather associated with the HRRR. The lapse rates are about 6.7, and storm relativity values, again, ranging from the 200s region, and plenty of 3 CAPE to work with. Could be a good setup for severe weather right along the backside of this convection on the southern edge. If we can see a push of warm air and we can see it carried up in that direction. Again, the low-level jet is not going to be as strong with this setup as compared to February 27th either. So, and that still kind of remains in question, but it is showing some decent instability in the backside. And this is definitely going to change up until this point. Keep in mind that the models are still 48 hours out from this actual event occurring. So there's going to be some changes up to this point. I'm just showing you, kind of giving you a rough idea of what they're currently saying. So this is the SREF model, and one thing that's nice about that is it gives us a combination plot that shows us the ingredients for some severe weather. For example, CAPE exceeding 500 joules, and then also it shows us bulk shear greater than 40. So this is kind of a mesh of some ingredients that are that produce more potential for some thunderstorms and maybe even some stronger thunderstorms. You can see ingredients around 4 p.m. according to the SREF model do tend to focus themselves around western Indiana during that time. So again, that's going to probably be my main target area, western Indiana, south of Lake Michigan, getting closer to where I was at during February 27th. Only this time, I'm thinking storms are probably going to be there according to what the current models are going to say. So it's probably going to change as we get to that point, but here's a look at the wind dynamics with this, okay, and the instability. You can see that we will have that push of instability according to the ECMWF, kind of showing a similar instability push that the HRRR was showing with that push behind that area of convection. Instability values between 1,000 and again into 2,000 in southern Illinois. I will not be going farther south than this line. Probably anywhere south of that, you get kind of bad terrain to intercept anything with, and it just gets more dangerous at that point. But you see your photographs are not really that broad and that well defined. Again, your low-level jet is not as strong, but you will still have some directional and speed shear and still have a curvature in that photograph that could favor possibly maybe a isolated tornado or two. So as that continues to progress forward, you can see that the instability really starts to die down as we get into the overnight hours, and then the event starts to really come to an end as that cold air begins to push its way further down south. So big question is, how far is that warm front going to push north? And will those storms become elevated rapidly along that warm front? And then will there be any that will reach maturity prior to them making that elevated stage? So that's kind of the question that remains. Here's some of the wind dynamics and the lower levels of the atmosphere. Again, I want to kind of show you that change in wind. Look at this gradient right here. You can see with the wind barbs across southern Michigan at around 4 p.m. on Thursday, you see that they're coming out of the southwest, and the wind kind of stagnates as you get closer to portions of southern Michigan, and it starts to make its way from the east on the back side. This right here is going to have a big factor in the development of storms along the warm frontal boundary. Okay, if storms stay within the warm sector, which will be on the southern edge of this, if they remain in that region, it is likely that they will be on the stronger side. But if they get impacted by this cold air making its way in, that could lead to the storms becoming more elevated, and then the likelihood of severe weather begins to go down. So big questions still up to this point, but needless to say, the thought is that there is likely going to be showers and thunderstorms across much of Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, and Ohio, but the severity level is going to be focused in that warm sector, so areas further to the south. So that's kind of what we are going to be watching as we go out and chase this event and continue to watch the models as they come in. So lots of things in question still up to this event, but make sure to subscribe and stay updated. I'm going to continue to provide updates as we get closer to this event. Again, current chase plan is going to be kind of just along that US 24 corridor, so that will probably change as I start to see a little bit more come into place. But thanks for watching, and I will keep you updated. See you all later.